És angolul fogom folytatni, úgyhogy magyarul még mindenek előtt először annyit elmondanék, hogy üdvözlök mindenkit. Akinek szüksége lenne tolmácsgépre, és esetleg még nem lenne neki, az itt a sarokban tud kérni. És most pedig azért, mert több vendégünknek is megy a repülőgépe valamikor a közeljövőben, további késlekedés nélkül el is fogjuk kezdeni a beszélgetésünket. And from now on, I'm going to speak in English. First of all, I would like to ask Gábor Horn, the chairman of our foundation, to give a couple of introductory words.
Okay. Thank you. Én viszont magyarul fogok beszélni. Rövid, nagyon szívesen beszélnék hosszan, de még lesz módom, mert a második körben én leszek a moderátor, és akkor elmondhatom a véleményem, leuralva ezzel a társaságot. Köszönjük szépen, hogy ilyen sokan eljöttek erre a konferenciánkra. Ha Orbán Viktor látna, hogy mekkora az érdeklődés a liberalizmus iránt, akkor lehet, hogy visszajönne a liberális táborba, hiszen legutóbbi hétvégi tüntetésükön körülbelül ennyien voltak, mint itt van. Köszönjük, hogy megtiszteltek minket, őszintén mondom. Ennek a mai rendezvényünknek az apropója az, hogy az elmúlt 15 évben másodszor tartja az Európai Liberális Fórum Magyarországon a kongresszusát, ami nekünk nagy megtiszteltetés, és köszönjük, hogy minket választottak. Ehhez nekünk nincs semmi közünk a Republikonnak, de nagyon nagy megtiszteltetés, hogy itt van a kongresszus. Az előző kongresszus talán 2013-ban, elnézést, valószínűleg csak én vagyok, aki a 15, köszönöm, 2015-ben, na van más is. Akkor volt, akkor azért, hogy mondjam, én biztos, hogy nem voltam ennyire pessimista, mint most. Tehát amit most látunk magyar liberálisok, és nem csak itt Magyarországon, hanem a világban, az azért, hát finoman szólva, az én 10 évvel ezelőtti elképzeléseimet messze alulmúlja minden szempontból. Tehát az alkalmat megragadva azt gondoltuk, hogy mi azzal tisztelgünk a liberalizmus értékrendje világa iránt, hogy tartunk egy konferenciát, ami erről szól. Ennek az első részében angol nyelven fogunk beszélni mindenkinek, akinek még kell, az itt föl tud venni tolmácsgépet, ha erre szüksége van, ezt ha tegye meg most már majd szép csöndben, és a második részében pedig magyar liberalizmus szakértőkkel, ha szabad ezt mondanom, olyan emberekkel, akikkel azt gondoljuk, hogy érdemes erről beszélgetni, fogunk arról beszélni, hogy hol tart a magyar liberalizmus. Az első részben inkább az európai liberális helyzetről beszélnénk, és a másodikban leginkább a magyarról. Jó konferenciát, elnézést a szűkös helyért, mi persze boldogok vagyunk miatta, de remélem, hogy mindenki le tudott ülni. Parancsolj!
I think I will use this microphone. This sounds a bit better. Usually I like to speak without the microphone, but it's really great to see so many people around here. So in this crowded environment, it's better to have a microphone. It's actually really wonderful that I'm telling this to you, because you're not here at every one of our events. This is really a uniquely big crowd. So thank you very much for being here and attracting so many people today. First, let me start with the introduction of the guests of our first panel today. I'm going from here towards the window. Right beside me is Ailbhe Finn, the Executive Director of the European Liberal Forum. Beside her, there's Jan-Christoph Oetjen, MEP of the German Liberal Party, FDP, and the Chairman of the Board of the European Liberal Forum. Beside him, there is Katalin, Cseh, former MEP, current MP of the Liberal Party Momentum, as you probably all know. And beside her, there is Jeannette Baljeu, the MEP of Dutch Liberal Party VVD. So thank you very much for being here today. And as Gábor mentioned in his introductory remarks, we would like to focus on the first, in the first panel of our conference today, on the European aspects of liberalism, because we're really living let's say, turbulent times from a liberal perspective, and there seemed to be a surge of illiberalism, not only in Europe, not only in Hungary, not only Europe, but globally. And we decided to use this opportunity created by having the General Assembly of the European Liberal Forum here in Budapest to sit down and talk with people who are representing liberal parties and liberal ideas around Europe, not only here in our in our country, to have their perspective and to listen to their experience and their ideas about how the challenges that we have seen rising up towards liberalism over the last couple of years, how these challenges could be overcome according to their experience and their knowledge. So, as I believe that some of you might certainly be very well aware of German, Dutch, or even Irish politics, some might not. So I decided to start our conversation today by asking you to give some short 5-10 minute introductions into the state of liberalism in your countries. Katalin, I think your job in this will be a bit easier because probably our audience is a bit more aware of the state of liberalism in Hungary. But I think it is relevant to take a look at it from a European context. And the part of moderating a discussion I hate the most is, choosing an order. I really hate that. I really hate to tell people when to speak. That's not a very liberal thing to do. But probably, as you're the chairman of the board of the European Liberal Forum, Jan-Christoph, maybe we can start with you.
Now it's on. First of all, thanks for having me and thanks for organizing this this debate. I think it's really important to see what happens in other countries in order to understand what one could do in their own country. And in Germany, you might have seen that we had national elections quite recently. In those national elections, the Liberal Party had a defeat, so we were not very successful after having been to government before. To say we were in government with progressive coalition partners, Social Democrats and Greens, and for us as liberals in Germany, we are a party in the center, but the tendency in the country in recent years with COVID, with the cost of living crisis, inflation, economic problems has turned quite into a right spectrum. So the voters that voted for us in the 2021 elections, I think they wanted economic reforms, and we were not able to deliver them in the government. So first, we were punished as liberals because we were not able to deliver on our promises during the time of being in government. And at the same time, the far right raised a lot. So the far right, I saw you have the far right Alice Weidel from Germany on the poster. So the far right had a historic surge and reached a very strong result. And after those elections, the former two big parties, I would say today one is still a big party, the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats as the smaller partner, went into coalition discussions and decided or are in the process of deciding about the creation of a new coalition in Germany. In Germany, we don't have the situation that there's one party that gathers a majority. It's always several parties that need to bridge the differences, that need to build a coalition, and I really think, but we will get then into this, one of the reasons of the surge of far right is that classical political parties of the center, either liberals or social democrats, doesn't matter so much, but they cannot live up to the expectations of the people, so they promise things that don't happen afterwards. And I would always say that when people have this kind of deception, this is even stronger when they have had high expectations. The deception's so much bigger so that that we had this surge of far right. This doesn't mean that my party is dead, to be clear as well. So because when we're not in parliament, but we have a very strong grassroots organization throughout the country. So on local level, on regional level, the party is still very active, and I think that there will be a liberal comeback as well. But we're discussing at the moment how to rebuild the party to be attractive for voters and how to be able to lift up to the expectations of the population.
Thank you, and I think because that was perfect. That was perfect, and we are going to get down to the details a bit later. I really hope so, at least. And as I'm aware of your flight schedules, Jeannette, I think we should continue with you.
Let's see. I'm Jeannette Baljeu from the VVD, and yes, I have a flight to catch, so I'll be looking at the mobile phone whether or not I can stay a little bit longer or have to leave and run, so that you know beforehand. It's not of disinterest. First of all, let me thank you and thank Momentum as well for the good discussions that we had. As a liberal, coming from the Netherlands, we know what's going on in the country, at least that's what we're saying. But we can only see it when we feel it, and we feel it when we talk to the people. So thank you so much that we had the opportunity yesterday to have the discussions. We also saw what the demonstrations do. So it is, yeah, you have to be brave, and that is what we hear from you. And therefore it's very easy to tell anything about liberalism from the perspective of a rather, well, country like the Netherlands, where we still, I feel, live in a very liberal country. And I say still because, of course, we also had changes. I think what Jan-Christoph explained in Germany, we saw that, of course, also in the Netherlands. And the VVD is the party, the liberal party that works together with the PVV of Mr. Wilders. And Mr. Wilders is, of course, a friend of Mr. Orbán. And that made immediately a very difficult situation for us as liberals. And to explain that situation a little bit, after the elections, the PVV became the biggest party. And normally in the Netherlands, they are in the lead of making a coalition. And no party really wanted to make a coalition with them. On the other hand, they've been there in parliament for 20 years, shouting that it should be different. And you also have to give them the responsibility. That is also in the Dutch tradition, that we give parties the responsibility when they are the biggest. But it is a very difficult line. So within making the coalition, we had like two items that were very, very, very important. First of all, normally the biggest party delivers the prime minister. All the other three parties that went into the coalition, including the VVD, they said, no way Mr. Wilders is going to be our prime minister. No way. So that was the first very important step. And the second, so all party leaders went back to parliament. They didn't become minister, they didn't become prime minister. And the second one was, it is very normal in the Netherlands to make a coalition agreement. And we do that most of the times with 3-4 parties. That is very normal. So we now have 4 parties with 3 new parties in government. They never governed before. It's the Farmers' Party, it's more like a Christian Social Party, and the VVD Liberal Party, economic liberal party. So what we see that the second very important point was that they had to declare, and that was of course especially for the PVV, the party of Mr. Wilders, that they should obey the rule of law, that they support Ukraine, and that we stick to the European Union. I mean, this was crucial. If that wasn't done in written, then there wouldn't have been a coalition. And what we see now is that it is still very difficult because, of course, we are a liberal country. We strongly uphold the liberal values, and that is in a way majority of the parliament, because of course the opposition is also very much on that line. So we are always also supported by when it comes to human rights, etc., with the opposition parties. But it is very important that we stick to the lines that we agreed on, and so it's very difficult. But we now see that now that they have taken responsibility, people see that they will not deliver, and that it is difficult to deliver for them, especially for the party of Mr. Wilders. So we either get another disappointed voters, which we don't know what will happen with them, whether or not they will not vote anymore or go back to other parties. But they're now a little bit declining in the polls. So this is, of course, the landscape that we are working in now. And it is truly for us, we guiding the rule of law, the European perspective, the Ukraine, all that kind of liberal values. That is what we are protecting in this way. So this is for a starter. Let's have the discussion, and if I do like this now, I have to leave. You know, I have to leave. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and Ailbhe and I am turning to you. I think you have a special role because unlike Jan-Christoph and Jeannette, you're not an MEP, but you're the executive director of the European Liberal Forum. However, I would also like to address you as an Irish person, because I think Irish politics are really unique in the European perspective. The Irish political system doesn't have the classical left-wing, right-wing liberal parties as the rest of, I guess, all other European countries. I have to admit that I'm not that familiar with every European political system, but I guess that's the reality. So I would be very grateful if you could say a couple of words about how liberalism appears in Irish politics, but also about the role of the European Liberal Forum, because our audience has already heard of ELF before, of course, through our events, and ELF is represented in the work of what Republican does, but I think nobody has ever introduced the European Liberal Forum to the domestic audience directly.
Yeah, it's really nice to see so many young people here. We are very happy to be hosting our General Assembly here at such an important, I think, moment for Hungary. You know, the world kind of watches what is happening here. It is a bellwether, I think, of the swing to the far right. And actually, we should have learned some lessons, I think, earlier on. For example, I think liberals in the European Parliament, for example, were always encouraging the European Union to really use Article 7. So, yeah, basically making sure that Mr. Orbán can't vote if he's going to behave in this kind of illiberal or anti-democratic way. And yeah, we've been watching what's happening here very closely. So it's nice also to have a public event to engage with you, because our role at the European Liberal Forum is to provide a kind of intellectual long-term vision for liberalism at the European level. So we're working with all our member parties, but also we have a number of Hungarian members, and Katalin until recently was also on our board. So we're very familiar with what's happening in Hungary, and we've done a lot of work on countering this illiberal, anti-democratic force here, and also comparing it to what's happening in other places. So they're using the playbook that Viktor Orbán used, and we have studied that. And unfortunately, I don't think the entire European Parliament, for example, or even the Council, so prime ministers, you know, we a little bit, I think, placated Viktor Orbán, which was not such a good idea. But yeah, I think we will learn those lessons now going forward, and that's really one of the focuses of the European Liberal Forum, is to do better politics, to make sure liberalism has a future. And also to be a bit more radical, because we've just had two discussions about the state of liberalism in Germany, in the Netherlands. As you said, in Ireland, it's not so classic, the political spectrum. But we do actually have liberal parties, or what you would call as kind of maybe economically liberal. So Ireland is a very free market place. We have a good economy currently, although Donald Trump is challenging us on that with the tariffs. We'll actually be the most impacted by tariffs from the US in Europe, and substantially so. Proportionally, we will be hit the worst. And that's because we have a very close relationship with the US. And up until recently in Ireland, we didn't actually have really a far right. We thought we were a little bit immune, but that is not the case. Disinformation, misinformation, what's happening here affects everywhere. We also have troll farms targeting sometimes our politicians now. And while we still don't have, an Orban or a Fidesz-like party that has gained traction, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I think the liberalism had, at least some of the values, had a heyday in Ireland. We had a very successful marriage equality referendum. We had a very successful abortion referendum, which I campaigned during. But over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a rise in far left populism, which we haven't really talked about, but is equally dangerous. And I think what we would like to also do at the European Liberal Forum is think of the counter narrative to what is becoming a very successful kind of protectionist, anti-migrant, nationalist vision of the world. And I think here was one of the first places we saw that. Also Poland. And those ideas spread. They're not only Hungarian, they're universal. So we need a universal answer to that. We need to be, I think, radically in the center, and also promote things like freedom. Freedom is, I've been so shocked trying to plan an event here that sometimes we cannot say things in certain environments in Hungary. That means we're not free. We are not free. You're not free to say what you want. You're not free to go out on the street and protest. So liberals here, I think you need to reclaim freedom as a concept, as liberals. So that's also something that we've been working on from the European Liberal Forum side of things. Reclaiming that narrative from the far right is really important. Who owns those values? And is it freedom for everybody or just freedom for a few?
Thank you very much. And these are really, really important points that we're going to get back to. But before we do that, Katalin, I wanted to ask you about momentum situation in Hungary. And I think I thought of this question because really in your case, I wouldn't ask you to describe the situation of liberalism or liberal parties in Hungary in general, because I think the audience is a bit more aware of that. But I'm really curious how you see momentum's role in current Hungarian politics, because Hungary is in a very unique political situation. We haven't seen anything like this probably since the transition, so something really big seems to be happening, at least. And I'm really curious, how do you see how momentum can play a role in this, and how liberalism can play a role in this, not necessarily through momentum, but through any other channel?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm so glad to see former colleagues and new friends here in Budapest, and then they get to experience the Hungarian hospitality, which is also an amazing part of our country, not only our terrible political system, which they also got to experience. But I am always really happy to see the dialogue between us Hungarians and our international friends, because this is what is very important to see and acknowledge, is that being a liberal in Hungary, standing up for freedoms, can maybe feel isolating in our local environment, but in Europe we have so many friends. It is really good. It was like such an amazing experience for me in the European Parliament, and I hope that also through this event you can also experience this liberal family that fights for your values, that shares your thoughts, your visions, and hopes for a change happening in the country that we hopefully see very soon. But Ailbhe finished on a very good note, and I want to pick up from that. So she spoke about the importance of freedoms and reclaiming the freedom narrative. And what I see is that Hungary is the best example, Orban's rule is the best example why liberalism is the biggest enemy of the populists. Because what he went after first, he went after the freedoms of the press, the freedoms of the judiciary, the freedom to be who you are, the freedom to live without violence, the freedom to speak, the freedom to protest, to assembly, because the freedom for enterprise, freedom to start your business without any governmental connections. Free people are usually not easy to rule, and this is why I think there has been a systemic attack on our freedoms as Hungarians. And I believe that anything that comes after Orbán has to have an element of freedom. Because, of course, we all want change, and I think we all who have lived under this regime for 15 years, no matter if somebody was a politician, somebody was an NGO worker, somebody whose rights have been affected, or somebody who is just like simply living here and is frustrated by everything that's going on around us, we want change. But I also think that freedoms, if they might seem abstract, or they might seem far away, are actually the basic foundations of our lives, and also the very firm guarantees against overreach. So this is where I see Momentum's role, to help change, to work together with anybody who can deliver change, and to stand up for our values, our liberal vision, for our freedoms every single time when it is needed. And it does not mean that we do not talk about other issues, because of course the state of the education, the state of healthcare, the corruption in the country, they are extremely pressing issues, and they have to be solved first and foremost once there is change, a change that we hope to be a part of. But it does not mean that topics like equality, topics like LGBTIQ rights, topics like women's rights, or climate change, for instance, they are less important. I don't think that change should only center around a few topics, but it has to deliver systemic justice for those who have been oppressed and singled out over this past 15 years. So I think this is Momentum's role, to be liberal without any compromise, to stand up for issues that might not be popular, that might not speak to 50% of the voters. But if there is anybody who is attacked, somebody whose life, whose existence, whose value is under threat, I think we have to advocate for it. Not only as liberals, but also as human beings. And I will never compromise when they tell me that I should stay silent about LGBTIQ issues, for instance, because it's divisive. I don't care. There are real people being targeted by those terrible laws that are being introduced just right now. It is about this physical safety of certain individuals who are being threatened, attacked, abused, bullied, harassed. The same with women's rights. Maybe the Istanbul Convention, the protection of violence against women, is a divisive issue, but I don't care. If women die because of the incompetence of the government, because of the unwillingness to changing laws, I will be standing there even if I'm alone. And this is why I believe in my party, because we never chose the path that provided with the most lucrative, the most grandstanding possibilities, but we always stood for what we believe is right. And I think values are just so important to form a part of conversation. I'm not saying that liberal values are only like the only way to go, but for me there is no alternative, absolutely. So I hope to see you guys soon again in Hungary in a bit more than a year, and you can also witness the transition to a free and European democratic country with a strong element of freedom that we very much need.
Well, let's hope so, and thank you very much for this. And I really appreciate that you spoke about the liberal values and how important they are to protect and speak up for, even if they don't necessarily have a majority support, because it's not about finding the majority, but it's about protecting certain values. But actually, it raises a very interesting dilemma, and by this, I would probably like to channel the conversation a bit back to the European level, but it starts at the level of European nation states. Jeannette, let's start with you, because this is something you mentioned, actually, the Wilders problem in the Netherlands, but I think it's the party of the far right of AfD in Germany as well. Do you believe in the approach of containment of the cordon sanitaire? This is something that we had a very interesting discussion on here, and actually at this stage a couple of month ago, and I'm really curious about this because, of course, this is very relevant not only on the national level but also on the European level. How the majority parties of the European Parliament approach those parties that might be on the rise but still might represent ideas that are considered to be contrary to the European democratic ideas?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and I think there's not a straight answer. We tried with the cordon sanitaire, and it didn't work because they kept growing. So that was difficult. On the other hand, if we look at the European spectrum, when we look at the European Parliament, we can have a majority without, in this case, the patriots, who have most of the far-right parties within them. So, so it depends. Of course, you want to stand for your rights, and that's I applaud you by saying we really have to push for our liberal values, whether or not that's in a coalition or what, or a majority, we still need those values. And that is exactly what we as liberal parties are doing in Europe as well. We stand for our values, and we are possible. It is for us possible to make a majority in Parliament. And I think that's a difference that makes it easier for us. But if you compare that to the Netherlands, although there are some really far more right parties than Wilders is, but that's not an excuse, I must say. But of course, there was also a possibility for a majority in the Netherlands with another coalition. It could be done. But then you neglect the fact that more or less the tradition in the Netherlands is that the biggest one is in the coalition. And we couldn't deny that if you tried cordon sanitaire for so long, that might be very difficult if you do that again, that the sentiment in Parliament is at that point, the sentiment in society is at that point, that there might be, even with another election, the possibility that it will grow even more. So that is the balance that you're looking for. In what position can you unmask, maybe I must say, I don't know how that's translated into English, true English, but how can you show the world that they are not the solution to the problems that we are standing for? The liberal values, Christian values, maybe in some word, not in the most conservative ways as patriots are sometimes proposing, but the values that we as liberals stand for, that is the way forward for society to find solutions on economic and climate questions. I mean, freedom is key. We heard that, and I agree completely with that. It starts with the freedom of the person. But after that, there comes the freedom of the businesses, freedom to make sure that you will be able to uphold your own business and do business with those that you want to do business with, that you have the opportunity to grow, that you have the opportunity to invent, to bring innovation to a market. I mean, these are all liberal values that we challenge, but that cherish, but it starts with that you have that freedom. So these are some of the dilemmas that we have to focus on. And I think every situation, every country will be different. There cannot be just one line drawn. So also for us in European Parliament, there's another weighing of the dilemmas than it's in the Netherlands or when it's in Germany or whatever. And it's for everybody to respond to and make sure that you explain it, why you make those choices. And I explained in the beginning why we made that choice. But hopefully we can, and that's the main focus, that we can let people see that they don't bring the solution. And unfortunately, I'm terribly sorry, but we have to leave with a colleague to the airport, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm thankful that I could be here for 1.5, 2 days, and looking forward to come back and hopefully in a successful year that you will have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us, and we will really welcome you back in a year's time, and let's see what we can discuss then. So thank you very much, and have a great trip home. And Jan-Christoph, you indicated that you would like to add something to this line of thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that Jeannette is right in the sense that every country has its own political traditions, its own electoral system, which differs as well, and you need to cope with those differences. In the European Parliament, the work in the European Parliament is very much consensus-oriented. So we try to find a consensus among all the parties, and I don't want to include the far right in this consensus, because that will shift the consensus to results that I don't want. That's why I think the way we do it in the European Parliament is right for the European Parliament. I have to say that if you look at other countries, for example, look at France, where they have a very strong far-right party, but they have a majority system that brings normally the largest party not only into power, but strongly into a power with the landslide of the seats. And the far right in France managed, for example, during local elections, to get elected a lot of mayors, a lot of local councillors, and so on at a certain time. And at the end, they were they had an election defeat in the elections that came afterwards, because they did a poor job in their role that they had as mayor, as a local councillor. So the effect that we see with traditional parties, that voters are have a deception because parties cannot live up to what they are offering or they're proposing. This can happen as well to far-right parties. And so I have to say, this could mean maybe it's good to give them the power. Maybe it's good to give them the to put them in charge in order to show that they are not capable. Let's stay in France. Afterwards, because France has a long tradition already of a very far-right party. Afterwards, the far-right learned about this. So they trained their politicians. And when they came into power the next time on a local level, they were quite good, some of them. And they managed to have results. They managed to, or they had better expectation management as well of what they proposed, what they wanted to achieve. And so people were maybe not even unhappy with them. So there's a risk as well on bringing them into power. And I say this as a German with full conscience of our history. So I think that you need to look at the situation in Germany. There is a very clear stance of all political democratic parties that we don't want to cooperate with the far right, with the AfD. And I have to say that compared to other parties in Europe, the AfD is so much far right that even the far right of other countries don't want to collaborate with them. So they are really cornered as well in the European Parliament in a very far right group, right of the far right. It's the Nazi rest. One could say. So it really, I think it really depends on the situation in the country. But for me, it's important that there are things in politics, and I very much join Katalin on this. There are things you cannot compromise on, and these are fundamental values. These are civil rights. These are human rights. And I think liberals have always to stand up on those and can never accept any cooperation with someone who wants to abolish this.
Actually, this whole conversation reminded me of another conversation that we had again right here in last November after the presidential elections in the United States. And one of the speakers on that conference that we had was our common friend from Portugal, Ricardo Silvestre, he's a very well informed person on American politics. He's really deep into that. And he's very passionate as well. as someone from Portugal. I think it's a national stereotype. But actually, after the elections in the United States, I remember Ricardo saying here that, okay, let them have the full Trump experience. Let them try what it looks like. And then probably the conclusion, not only for the Americans, but for the rest of the world, will be that, you know, this is something that you don't want. That if you start losing something, and then you never know when it stops. And I understand why Ricardo said it after the American elections, because I think that was really a challenging time, and it's certainly an interesting thought. But actually, I think it's really in line with what you mentioned, that if these politicians have to try themselves in actual roles when they can make decisions where they have to prove themselves, then that's the real, that can be the real game changer. And I'm really curious about your opinion as well. Like if you agree that this can, on the long term, have positive consequences.
Well, sorry, I just want to say the problem is that they don't play the rules. So if you would say, okay, I mean, I talked about France, which is local elections, right? So they were not able to change constitution, they were not able to change a political system. But the problem is, and this is what you see with Trump, what you see here, is that they change the system. They don't play the rules. They want to overcome what has been installed as organizations, as state rules. So that, I think that's the main issue for me, I would say, that you cannot think, okay, then they will do a poor job and they will lose elections the next time. Maybe there will be no elections again. I think that's the real issue behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at what Trump is doing now, it's not just having obviously an impact on the US. It's a global crisis. We're in a global crisis because Donald Trump is in the White House. So I think the approach of yeah, I mean, if you said the same thing about Hitler in the past, should we have let Hitler come to power? No, we have to fight. We have to fight it. And I think in some situations we have, as liberals, maybe compromised on our values in order to mirror some narratives that are appealing to far-right voters. And I think that's a mistake, because actually you can't take someone else's vision. That doesn't work. What you have to do is come out with something that is convincing but still aligned with your values. Otherwise, people don't know what you stand for. And I think that really was the problem with the Democrats. And I agree with what Jeannette said. Freedom is not just about civil rights, it's also about economic freedom. For example, for women, we have been freed so much by economic freedom. And I would say it's equal things. We have better legal rights now, but we are also more free to work in the labor market. And that is also a liberal value. It has to be the two sides. And actually, if you look at the far right, this reclaiming of freedom is also from an economic perspective. So we need to look at those two sides of things. Yes, human rights, but also economic freedom. And Donald Trump is ruining the economic freedom of the US, but also here. And I think we need to take advantage of that in Europe. I mean, Le Pen, Viktor Orban, Vital, they are all going to be in really bad positioning now after this trade war. How can they say to their constituents that actually Donald Trump and what he is doing in protectionism is good for them? It's not. So we need to use that as liberals. Actually, now our narrative is strengthened by this trade war, I think.
Yeah, this conversation reminded me a little bit of I think at the first part of my EP mandate around 2019-20, I met with a lot of colleagues from other countries, Western European, well-developed democracies, and they always told me, oh, how sorry they are about what's going on in Hungary, and it must be so hard. And I told them that, like, watch out, this is not a Hungary-specific issue. Democratic backsliding can happen anywhere, and or even if in your country. And once it happens, what is destroyed is so much more difficult to build it back than it would have been to protect your country from this phenomenon. And I'm not sure they believed in what I said. I mean, I think a lot of people globally overestimate the strength and resilience of their system. But as we see now also in the case of the United States, the country we thought to be a beacon of democracy, and the stability of the institutions there served as a guiding principle, I think, for many of us. And now we see how fragile everything is. I really hope that everybody else who still has a chance of protecting what they have will use this occasion to step up. And yes, and I would also come to the positives, because we have to look for those, right? So we have to stay optimistic even in hard times. And I agree with Ailbhe that what's going on in the world can give an opening for the EU to step up and to repair those structural problems that we liberals have been warning for many years now, and maybe nobody has taken us really seriously. But for instance, let's look at defense. I don't think that any self-respecting global power would be so dependent on the elections of a country where they have absolutely no say at. We Europeans, we are unable to protect ourselves. And we have a war in one of our borders. We don't have the capacity to provide safety for our citizens, because we always believe that, like, yeah, it's like so much more easier to always rely on NATO and the US will be there for us, and I don't want to spend that money, and somebody will fix it for me. No, they won't. And when we were talking about that, I remember, 5-6 years ago, at least for me, a lot of colleagues told me, like, oh yes, but like, it's unrealistic, and why are you so paranoid? Like, no, I'm realistic. And maybe now this is a chance for everybody to realize that we have to fend for ourselves. Same for markets and our economic freedoms. We have a huge single market in the EU that we just don't use properly. And now so I think we've witnessed this phenomenon for a quite long time, that if anybody had a big dream or a big project to realize, young people full of energy, they all aim to go to the US and to realize their dreams over there, because here it was just too hard, because everything was too bureaucratic, the taxes were too high. If you wanted to market your, I don't know, digital product here, you would have to comply with 27 different regulations. That's like stupid. And now we can create an environment where the brightest minds of the world could come here to study at universities that could be again in the world's top 10, because we don't have one single university in the world's top 10 in Europe. That's crazy. We can create an environment for businesses to thrive, to people to dream about the European possibilities for themselves, for us to see that we can do it ourselves. We don't have to be this, little sister of somebody. And it will be very hard. It will be very, very hard, because it will be a lot of structural reforms, a lot of money needed, a lot of compromises to be made, and of course even technical discussions, because we are in Hungary, of course, and we have an amazing prime minister who will veto anything that is good for the EU. So how we solve that? I don't know, but we have to solve it, because if we don't, unfortunately, our economic freedoms, our physical safety, and actually our role in a global order that is shaping around us will be all questioned. And for us Hungarians, I think it's fundamentally important for the EU to be strong, for us to be united, and for us to be a part of it as Hungarians. Because we are not immune. No matter what Orbán promises, I mean, I guess not in the room, everybody will, doubt what he's saying, but just the thought of that through his posturing with Trump, he can exempt Hungary somehow from the tariffs, or then if NATO rolls back, miraculously we will stay protected. This is not the case. So if somebody is interested in the Hungarian interest, then the Hungarian interest is a strong EU that is reformed and that is driven by our values and freedoms. And now it is the last moment for doing that.
I think everyone would agree with you that in the current global political situation, Europe has to find a new path for itself, and it has to rethink itself and its role from many, many perspectives. And I think at least those present in the room believe that liberalism has to play a very important role in that rethinking process. And I would like to ask all three of you how you see liberalism playing a role in this. And I'm very curious, based on the results of last year's EP elections, whether you see the democratic backsliding that you mentioned happening at the European level as well. Do you see that Renew still has the strength, the power to influence the politics of the future of Europe? Because Renew lost 25 seats compared to the last composition of the EP before the elections. So that was certainly the biggest loss among the party groups. But still, where is Renew now? Does it have the power? And if so, what it can do?
Yes, I mean, you're correct in that we lost about a quarter of the members. That puts us fifth in the European Parliament. But as Jeannette already said, we can still have a progressive coalition in favor of some of the things that you've just spoken about. So like more European defense, basically finalizing the single market, responding to the tariff war. However, you can also have a coalition more to the right, and that is a problem, right? We if they so choose, the EPP, which is the Conservatives, can go more to the right on certain issues, and that's a challenge. Not going to sugarcoat it. We have been surprised occasionally by the way that they are coordinating together. And as I said, then the Conservatives can choose between our coalition, basically, and then this more right-leaning. What we are trying to say to them, and the role that Renew is trying to play, is also to be a bridge builder, to be kind of a cool-headed central figure in this more kind of progressive, centrist coalition. So that's the role that we are trying to play. It is quite difficult. However, as we say, the global environment now that we've been warning about, and many of our member parties in the Liberals and in Renew Europe have been warning about for many, many years, it is becoming a reality. So actually playing realpolitik, being stronger on things like defense and security, this is strengthening, I think, our narrative. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in 4 years, because I think there hasn't really been a proper response yet to this far right. But I think we could be in a stronger position in 4 years, because the damage that is going to be done by the far right, by Trump, people can see that. And just going back to Irish politics, we had our elections just after Trump was elected, and people realized, actually, we're not going to vote for the far left because they won't be able to negotiate with Trump. So we actually used that as our Liberal Party. We have kind of two central parties. They're now, again, in a coalition together. And Irish people realized, okay, in this globalized world, actually, we need to hold on to this liberal positioning. So hopefully, if we are communicating properly with voters, we will be able to ride the wave, in fact, and take it as an opportunity. But only if we have, I think, the right communication, the right narrative, the right strategy in the European Parliament. And yeah, Jan-Christoph can tell you more about how it's actually working from his point of view as well, I think.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yes, the majorities have shifted in the parliament, and there are different options, but I really think that on core values, even the Christian Democrats, the Conservatives, they cannot go with the far right. And they will not do it. They will do it occasionally on some laws, maybe, but not on the vision. But I think that we're not bold enough and not outspoken enough on the vision that we have for the European Union. I really think that we have to influence public opinion more on where do we want this European Union to go. Because yes, we can discuss about the nitty-gritty of the different laws that are proposed. And I'm a policymaker, I'm a member of parliament, I do this all the time, but it's annoying for the people. The reality is that we're in a global crisis we're in a situation where what I would call the crossroads of history, maybe, and our reaction to this historical situation will define the way we will go as a continent, as for the whole of our societies. So I really think that, as Katalin mentioned, defense, that we really have to push for this European approach on defense, being independent from the US, cooperating more, because it's not a question of spending money, because we already spend more money than the US. It's just that we are not coordinated enough, and that the countries are doing the same thing 27 times. So instead of doing it together. So I really think that this vision of having stronger Europe, and I would even say going at some point to United States of Europe, or however you want to call this. I mean, I don't mean next year, huh? But as a long-term perspective, to go on this path and tell the people that there is this possibility. That it's just a question of willingness, because it's a question of willingness. It's not about the small decisions. It's about the big decisions, and those big decisions, unfortunately, are not taken in the European Parliament. They're discussed, prepared, pre-cooked in the European Parliament. But actually, is the head of states, and we have to pressure them in order to go further, because they are reluctant in giving competence to others. They're reluctant on having to agree to compromise all the time with the others. But that's the way it should go. So I really think that we have to be bold, that we have to be outspoken, that we have to be visionary as liberals in order to bring the people behind us.
Yeah, I agree, and I won't speak about how is it in the EP, but rather take another angle here. When I look at polls about what the EU means for people, I always see these responses that, oh, it's good to travel, and I don't know, I like the euro, and things like that, which are of course great, and then peace, which is very important for a certain generation, but maybe for those who were born into this, they don't really see the perspective. So the EU is very often perceived as this like very technical cooperation, just kind of like, you know, doing a trip on the train and not having to show your passport, which is of course good. But I don't think that we Europeans share this overarching vision, indeed, of what ties us together. But there are so many things that could be fleshed out. It's just like such the best place in the world to live at. Like, this is the place where people are the most safe, where we get the most benefits, most help if we are sick, if we are in trouble. And even now with the US backsliding, we have to be the beacon of democracy. We have to be the ones who support the good causes also globally, who invest in sustainable industry, for instance, elsewhere, that we support those NGOs to fight the good fight. We can be a guiding light in so many areas. And this is a joint path for sustainable and responsible leadership that could tie us together from Estonia to Portugal and from Sweden to Italy. No matter, we are very diverse and also geographically dispersed, but I really think that we can assume leadership in these new times based on our values and our economic strength, because we always underestimate the importance of both of it. We are the world's largest market. Everybody wants to trade with us. We are like very, very good customers. And I don't think we use our strengths well enough. And the same with our values. We take them for granted. Yeah, it's there. Okay, not maybe in Hungary. But also this is why it's so important to see the context, that what can be achieved and what can be lost. So if we can tie these two strengths we have and actually make sure to have the frameworks in place to defend and protect and realize these values within and outside the Union, then it can be our new joint role with 450 million of us that makes us stronger and more prosperous. And this is why I think you need liberals, because times are changing so fast that you don't only need to fix these, like I said, small things, the amendment to an amendment, and I don't know, the circumference of a tire, or I don't know how big the tank is, but you just need like a radically new vision about how you think about Europe and how you tackle these new challenges. And I am not sure the Commission or like anybody has the answer. So if we just like think out of the box and we dare to be brave and we dare to say things indeed that we need a much more united Europe, or we need to do away with unanimity, that we have to speak with one voice on certain issues where this is not the case. And we can, create a positive vision also behind that. This can shift the conversation. And this has to come from us, because I don't really see anybody else doing that. But the bottom line here is that we have to make sure that, first of all, we implement our own laws. Because I really see a vision for Europe for leading globally in terms of value-driven growth. But if we cannot implement our own internal rules to keep a member state away from backsliding, then yeah, it's not the best start, right? So this is why we have to be sure that, for instance, the Hungarian government won't be able to track the participants of the Budapest Pride with the facial recognition technology that was actually approved to catch terrorists in a crowd. So this is not used to find you guys in a crowd and fine you with 500 euros against any kind of European legal possibility to do so. If we cannot make these small things, or like not small, but like these initial things right, then we won't be able to play our role in the world. And this is why we have to come in with our values, with our voice, with our advocacy, and with our pressure on the Commission and on the courts, so that we can have a basis where we can build a new Europe upon.
I fully agree with you, and I think nobody would argue with you when you're saying that probably it's not the nuanced issues of legislation, or not very small issues that are going to convince voters that liberalism matters, but it's the storytelling. It's having a very strong and coherent narrative, and to have a vision that really brings people into the liberal family. But do you know who has a great story and narrative? Populists. They are really good at this. And actually, I was suggested it, and I would really like to honor what you suggested, and I would like to keep a couple of minutes for like 1 or 2 questions from the audience for the end of the discussion. But this is a question I would certainly like to ask before we get to that. You might find this question a bit provocative, but this is a very honest question. Do you see anything in the illiberal political playbook that liberals could use, which brings them to political success? So logically, they must be doing something right. Is there something that you believe that liberals can use without compromising on values?
I can start. So I think it's a real big problem that centrists and liberals and progressives are very often seen as condescending people who just always preach their facts, that only speak to a certain few, that we have to be sure to put a very big focus on talking to the society in its entirety, and to reclaim emotions also from the populists. Because I think we liberals, we love to be very technical and data-driven and speaking in very long sentences and have these very technical proposals. But I think that emotions and understanding the fears and the anxieties and problems of people have in all walks of life, it is so important. And this is why my party, Momentum, we really focus on building the local grassroots. And this is why we engage in as many conversations with voters as possible, that we walk around, go around the country, we knock on doors, we talk to people, we try to, be there for them if we can, no matter if it is in a local government or in the national parliament or anywhere where we are represented, so that there is a dialogue, and this is not only a one-way conversation. So I think many people have, or how to put it nicely. So I really don't think that the vision that certain parts of the society has about those who vote for populist parties is right. And I don't think that is decent. I don't think that is justified. And I really don't think that certain worries that people might have that drives them to vote populists are you know, they should not be having that. Because I think it's reasonable or to understand why people are afraid for their safety, why they believe isolated in society, for instance, why they want different things for themselves, why they want a totally new perspective, and it, you know, does not make them bad people whatsoever. These are very legitimate worries that the majority of the European mainstream failed to address, and I think we just have to be better in coming up with solutions to these problems, and just really understand that the world is a very unstable place right now for so many of us, and not for the same reasons. Because maybe somebody is very much worried about climate change, as I am, but maybe somebody is very worried about you know, the lost industry leaving his village because this industry is relocating to, I don't know, some other country outside the EU because the taxes are so high here, and he is genuinely worried about, you know, where will he work. So yeah, I think these are just like very important things to converse about.
I would like to be brief. So I just want to say three things I would not like to copy. So this is, they're working with fake news. We shouldn't work with fake news. They are talking to fears. We shouldn't talk to fears. They are unwilling to solve problems, because it's the problems that are existing that are helping them to win elections. We shouldn't do this. We should try to solve problems. But what we need to do is to be emotional. And we are not. We are very, as you say, sometimes very rational, technocrat even. Some of the liberal parties. Momentum does this better, as we do, by the way. But I really think that we need to give hope, that we need to have positive emotions that we're talking about and that we're appealing to, because it's those positive emotions that are a positive message that make people be able to move, to engage, and to support a liberal political movement.
Yeah, I think we don't really have anything left to lose. Every liberal value, everything that we've fought so hard for so long is being eroded. So now is the time to be brave. Sometimes they have a much braver comms strategy than we do. Appealing to emotion, using artificial intelligence, other new platforms. I mean, if you look at the far right in the US, they have essentially taken over the Republican Party. They've created completely new social media trends. And we haven't done that, right? So we're not communicating in a modern way to people. You know, all the kind of podcasts, the new we don't have a European social media platform. We don't have one that's owned by Europe. We need to fix that. So these are the things I think we need to do. We need to create our own platforms, not just use the ones that are existing. For example, this is one of an idea that came out of a session that we had recently as a policy lab. We need to create those dialogues. You know, we need to have our own big Joe Rogan podcasts and things like that, where our narratives are coming out. So yeah, I think we need to create our own comms channels. And do it in a creative way, so that our narrative is coming out more clearly, because we can't rely on, for example, X anymore, and really keeping up with the also the way that the media has now, the traditional media has gone in Europe. We've allowed it also to be bought by oligarchs. The diversity of the media landscape is very, very important for liberalism, but we have here in Slovakia, Italy, you know, these are places we should have already stopped that from happening. So yeah, I think we need to diversify the communication streams that we have.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy actually that you gave so tangible answers. Like this was not just theory; it was actually practice. These are ideas that can be put to use, and I really believe that they should be put to use. And just to finish our panel, I think there would be time for, let's say, 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Usually I would ask a colleague to give the microphone to someone who has questions, but I don't know how you can get through the people, because I can see questions in the back, and I'm so happy that I see young people asking questions. Hooray.
Hi, and in the beginning it was already mentioned that the troll forums and all the communications forums have already influenced the political scene we have seen in Europe. So, and even the recent bomb threat in Hungary, we have some threats that leads it to Russia. And many of the troll forums are originating in Russia. Are there any more decisive actions planned by EU to stand up against Russia, like more sanctions or something more?
I think it's practical to hear the other question. There was another on the other side of the room. Let's have these 2, and then Jan-Christoph, who will have to leave early, will give the first answer, and then me.
Thank you. So my question is about the Hungarian situation, but I'm interested in the international opinions. So do you think that Magyar Péter and Tisza could bring this liberal change to Hungary and to the Hungarian system?
So I try to answer. First on the troll farms and on Russia. Indeed, Russia is trying to influence elections in Europe by social media, by troll farms. But by the way, I don't know if you have seen that in Germany there have been attacks by asylum seekers just before the elections. There are hints that those have been commanded by Russia, financed by Russia, in order to change public opinion on the migration topic. So I really think that this is they play a very dangerous game, and I think that Europe has to be more bold against Russia with sanctions, etc. The problem is that we have this anonymity rule in this area, so we cannot be as bold as we would like to be, because we need to bring everybody on board, and there's one person that is not peeing enough. So so this is really the issue that we have in this regard. And then I don't like to give comments on the national policy, political situation from outside. I just have to say that Péter Magyar, who's a colleague in the European Parliament, now has a very cautious voting behavior. I put it like this. So he's not really firm in his stances. I personally, but this is my personal opinion, would prefer to see people that are really outspoken on fundamental rights and fundamental values taking the lead in Hungary. But I can understand that the most important, or one of the first aim, is to change government and to overcome the regime that you have at the moment. But I would be, for me, it's important as a liberal and as a European that we make sure that there are forces afterwards that keep Europe on this pro-European liberal path inside our family.
Thank you very much, and run and catch your plane.
I will not catch everyone.
You will miss your flight.
Thank you very much for coming. Please, if you...
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, because we've been learning a lot about the new party, is a bit too conservative to fully defend liberal values. So if it were up to me and I was a Hungarian voter, well, then maybe I would vote for Momentum because they more align with my vision of liberalism. That being said, it must be very inspirational for you all to have the opportunity or to see the end of the Orbán regime in sight. So I'm not going to, Jan-Christoph said, I actually also don't think that we win by complaining about other parties in the centre. You know, in the European Parliament, we are a coalition. That's also important. But for me, I think when I look at what's happened recently with Pride and the protests and these kind of things, if you don't come out on the streets and complain about that and defend all right to protest, then maybe they're not going to be able to fully align with the kind of change that probably a lot of you are expecting from the end of the Orbán regime. So I think you need to vote strategically. I think there's probably, I would like to see maybe more of a coalition in Hungary if you really want to make the most progress. If you look at what happened in Poland, for example, they are making progress through this coalition. We're also in that coalition. We have two parties in Renew who are part of the coalition in Poland, and it takes a whole societal shift to fix what peace did in Poland, and it will be a similar, I think, problem here. I think it would be interesting to have a junior coalition partner focused on really fixing some of the problems that the Orbán regime has created here. And I would also like to say that we are probably seeing the beginning of the fear of a regime, a far-right regime, leaving power. It will get worse. And I wonder what the response from Tsica will be to that. It'll have to be very careful, but it will get worse. And I think this is only just the beginning of that time. You know, you're a year away. I feel like there will be more threats to basic democratic order in Hungary, and you need the full political spectrum to deal with that.
Yeah, thank you. As your question was more addressed to the international guests, I would rather answer the second one on Russia. So I always found during my tenure in the EP the response of the European Union to certain things that are happening around us, like so naive and so inefficient. So just as an example, when at the outbreak of the war, the Russian medias, the Sputnik and Russia Today were banned like very ceremoniously, and I mean, I would say rightfully so. I asked the question to the commissioner at that time that, okay, very good, but what do you do if in a country actually the state media is the Russian propaganda? When you turn on the Hungarian state TV, you hear the Kremlin's talking points. That is like actually Russia Today. So what do you do when a member state is involved in this information? And then they said, like, well, we cannot really do anything. And this is a problem, because when these cycles are being reinforced within the Union, when we cannot protect the integrity of the information space we have in Europe, and we do not have the mechanisms for that, then how can we prevent Russian information propaganda taking over and really creeping into conversations? Because here in Hungary, I see that in the recent polls, some, I don't know, 40% of Hungarians now think that Ukraine is responsible for being attacked, which is absolutely crazy. But if you just think about how effectively Russian propaganda was spread under the guise of the European Commission without anything really meaningful happening, then, well, it's not a big surprise. Our strategic communications are so understaffed. We also do not have our own European interpretation of things that are going in the world, and not only about the war. I just like another example, not directly related to your question, but I think it ties here. So when we got the vaccinations during COVID, Hungary also took up Chinese vaccines from China. And when the Chinese vaccines got delivered, right in prime time, in this like big Chinese colored plane, the Chinese anthem was playing, flags and marches, and like, I mean, rightfully so, okay, they gave the vaccines, okay. And when the Pfizers came from the EU, they came at night in an unmarked flight, and they put it in, like, airport workers put it in a truck and they drove away with it. So why couldn't we have, you know, a blue and yellow plane with a European anthem playing, with the European flags waving, so that we can also show that we are there? So standing up against Russia is one thing, and I think we should do more. I think we should implement the sanctions stronger, because whatever we have in place is not implemented correctly. So maybe this is easier to start with than, like, you know, having new things because of the majorities. But also we have to create our own narrative, and we have to protect our information space, and we have to be more forthcoming with our vision as Europeans. And this is something that has also to come countering the rise of the populist tide that is building on lies. Let's build our new narrative based on truth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes it backfires. So we had a recent panel on disinformation. Russian propaganda is also taking hold in Ireland. We had 2 MEPs in the last mandate who regularly would, basically just parrot Russian propaganda. And you know what? They weren't elected, thank God. Because Irish people hate that, you know, and it didn't work out for them. And we had a lot of people who were very effectively taking that, showing it to people and saying, actually, isn't this weird? These Irish MEPs are parroting Russia Today. And it did not work in their favor. So actually, I think it's about what you say and the spin that you use in order to counter it. We can't stop the troll farms, unfortunately, but what we can do is respond to the narrative. And sometimes, for example, another one that we were talking about recently is this whole thing about the bed bugs in Paris that was Russian disinformation and propaganda, but actually it didn't work. So sometimes it's not effective, and it's the way that you respond to it. I think that it's important, and we can also use technology also to kind of block some of these things or indicate when things are coming from them. So yeah, using more technology to make sure that people understand when they see, this is disinformation, this is misinformation, particularly young people.
Well, thank you very much, Ailbhe. Thank you very much, Katalin, and thank you for Jan-Christoph and Jeannette as well, who had to leave already. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm really appreciative of this, and I'm pretty sure that you contributed largely to having such a great crowd here today. But please, and now I'm talking to our audience. Oh, and thank you very much for the questions as well. It was really valuable to hear what you find the most concerning and the most interesting topics. But now I'm turning to you, because after a short, let's say 10-minute break, we're going to continue with the second panel of our conference today, which is going to take place in Hungarian, but it will be interpreted into English. So those international guests who are here in the audience, please stay with us if you can and listen to the Hungarian conversation in 10 minutes time. Thank you very much.